Everyone, so excited today. Welcome back to the Paperless Movement. Today we will talk about CODA. And I don't know where to start, but this is a really and just see we lost some connection here. Starts very good. Okay, it doesn't matter. As long we are live on YouTube, maybe just give a hint in the comments in the chat on YouTube that things are working. Okay. So yeah, really excited today because we will talk about CODA, and we don't only talk about CODA today. We actually have Noah Silverstein from CODA with us to actually build something that is on my heart for a long time, a tools comparison table. And I built these, if you follow Paperless Movement, I built these on my own on the website, and I know you guys loved it. And I had to take it down several times. And I was always looking for ways to rebuild this. Now that we have this awesome Paperless Movement community, and we are talking a lot about the different digital productivity systems everybody has, I wanted to find a way how we can compare each other's productivity system, but also get a database built up by the community on the tools that we use, because I didn't want to make these reviews any longer. It is a subjective opinion that I have on these tools, and this would be the review. So the idea came up inside the community. Why don't the people who actually use the tool share their opinion on this tool? And this way we will, leverage this database in a much better way. And it will be just inside the Paperless Moving community. So it is really high quality data going in there, and not, everybody can access it and mess around. So really excited to get started with this. Noah, before we talk about who you actually are and why you are here on the stream, I just want to point out the elephant in the room. I'm not sure if it is an elephant, but Notion versus CODA, and why I decided to go for CODA, actually Airtable versus CODA, because I started to build this comparison tool on my own using Airtable, getting data in. It's great to build up databases, but then there we have the lag for visualization, and I have a very specific picture in mind how this comparison page looks like. And then I was on the CODA event. I attended live there, and I went on stage and talked there with some guys from CODA. And then Noah reached out to me and said, "Hey, why don't we just connect and talk about what you have in mind there?" And yeah, this is how we came to this. I presented him this idea. He got the agreement from CODA management to actually support the Paperless Movement building this database. And I'm so excited. Now I stop talking because I think you guys want to start seeing. Noah, welcome to the show, and quick introduction from your side.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So excited to work together and build some exciting docs. I can give a brief intro. I work at CODA. I'm an engineer here. I've been at CODA for about a year and a half now, working as an engineer, but I was a productivity lover and actually a user of CODA long before that. I discovered the product years ago when it first came out in beta. I've always been a bit of a productivity nerd, going between all sorts of different tools. And so I have kind of a deep-seated love, apart from the fact that I work for the company. Always interested to look at how different tools work, how different productivity systems work, and how people manage what they're working on. So, this project certainly tickled some of my interests there. Happy to jump into this and build your dream doc together.
Awesome. So I just read in the chat there's an issue with some echo. Do you hear any echo from me, or can anybody else confirm this in the chat that I have the same issue? I just want to ensure that people are not annoyed by audio not working properly. Okay, so if nobody complains anymore, let's dive into this. Yeah, thanks for your introduction, Noah. And as I said, really excited to have you on board. And without further ado, I would say I just add your screen here with the empty doc that we have, and let's dive right into this.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we have a blank doc here where we can start from scratch. We like to say, blank page, blinking cursor, a world of possibility. Very familiar for anyone who's used a typewriter or anything since it. But we can, start from here and build up a pretty beautiful or complex or whatever the system you want it to be. So we talked a little bit beforehand about what you might want to create, but I think a good place to start is always thinking through the underlying data that we're trying to collect, the schema of the core tables, those core databases that will build the bulk of this doc. Before we dive in too much, I do want to mention that we're using our new editor, which we launched at Block Party. And so this is still in beta. We might try out some of those features, but if we see any bumps along the way, just keep in mind that we're still using that beta editor. Without further ado, should we start with our core tables?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's just let the people know that 1 week ago we met already for 1 hour. We recorded everything what we built there, and it was an awesome session. I really hope that we can repeat this, but the recording just broke. I never had any issues with screen recording. New MacBook, never do a live stream or recording with a new MacBook. So this is what happened, but it led to the idea that we do this live now. So excited to do this again. Yeah, let's dive into this.
Well, hopefully it can't go wrong since we're streaming it out to the world live.
Nah, it won't.
Great. Okay, well, we have a blank doc. I just added to this first page here. Often I like to start with kind of a data page where we can put all of those core tables, and then we can build different views and different ways of looking, at the data and different ways on top of that. So maybe as a good place to start, we should start with the table that we want to end up with. And I think the idea that you've described to me is we want to have each person in your community be able to submit a review of each of the tools they use. So I think what we're going to end up with is some kind of tool ratings table. And this will allow each person to submit a review for each of the tools they use. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Great.
That's the idea.
Great. So, just as a start, I'll add in a table. I just used the / command for that. We can start adding in, what are each of the properties? What are the columns that we want to associate with each of these ratings? I imagine this is going to look something like we need a tool. We wanted to associate which person is submitting the review. Then we're going to want the ratings using your ICOR framework. So, maybe
quickly we just explain what ICOR means for the people who aren't aware of this. So for the members in the paperless movement, you probably heard about this already, and maybe on YouTube as well. I developed the ICOR framework, which the ICOR stands for, or these 4 letters stand for Input, Control, Output, Refine, and defines the productivity system end to end, your digital productivity system. And it was the idea for me, or actually on the one-on-one coaching over the last year with my members, I realized it always comes down to these 4 letters or these 4 categories where we struggle with building up the system. And if you want to learn more about ICOR, there is plenty about it in the paperless movement membership. And the idea then as well is having this tool rating according to this ICOR. So it makes it very easy to find the right tool that fits into your productivity system. It might not make much sense right now, but once this is running, it will just pop out and absolutely make sense. Trust me, I have faith in this idea. Okay, let's do this.
Great. So I've just added in, a couple of basic pieces of information here. We'll want to know what the tool is, who's submitting it, and then each of the tools, they'll rate on your scale for each of those factors in the ICOR framework. And we could have them submit this in a variety of ways. We have a lot of nice visual ways to look at numbers. Maybe we want it to be a little slider that you can drag back and forth. But I had just set it as this nice little kind of star control, which allows us to have a visual rating of how well something is working. And of course, you can customize this to your heart's content. You can choose a different icon if you want it to look different.
Make it a bold.
Which one do you want?
Below the star, the bold.
Yes, of course, the lightning bolt. That's a good one. Okay, so I'll make all of those. Do you want them to be the same, or do you want them to be different?
Of course, all the same. And it's important that we have a 5-star rating, or maybe just a 3-star rating. Not sure yet. We will see once this goes live and the feedback from the members. But the visualization later on, maybe to show some context, I will just quickly pull this up. You can keep talking and I will hop in later on.
Yeah. So, and then, finally, the last thing I just dropped in here, this is one of our new features that we announced at Block Party. and we call it canvas columns. And what this allows you to do is have full rich text within within each of your rows. And so that means that you can add anything you want in that little section. So that can just be some text, but it also can be richly formatted. I can even add in a new table within this. So there's a great amount of flexibility to add whatever you want in that canvas column. So we could just use plain text,
go wild there. Yeah,
we may as well use the shiny new feature. And of course, we have some customization here. So for example, maybe we wanted to show a little preview of what that content is. So this person's, I love this tool, and then we'll get a nice little preview of that here in the row. So we can customize this to our heart's content. We can modify and change this later. But I think this is a good start. Does this look like kind of the core properties that we'll want to keep track of for each of the ratings?
Yeah, exactly. And to provide the context, I will just share now this image that I was just mentioning. Let me just come on. There we go. Okay, can you see it? Yes. So yes. I'm also a gamer, and I'm playing League of Legends every now and then, and they have a hero page. So you are playing different heroes in there, and they have different statistics and specifications, if you may. And this brought up the idea that I want to lay it out for the ICOR framework the same way. So just imagine having this radar chart here, which I really liked on this page, having the ICOR, right? Only the 4 letters there. And then we see in one glance how good this tool is in regards of the different ICOR sections, and instead of the hero image, we will have the logo and so on. And this is what we want to build up, but also having a comparison table where we quickly have all the tools next to each other that we're interested in and see then the specifications to compare them. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited to get there. It's always kind of fun to have that end goal in mind and then work your way there bit by bit and see how it's built up.
Absolutely. But I think having this context, it makes more sense now seeing these 5 numbers. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Great. So I think the next thing is we'll want to build up the related databases that we want to keep track of. So, if we were to start this naively, and I was, trying to choose what tool I'm adding a rating for, I probably would start with a select list. And this is just a list of text values. So, maybe the tools we want to keep track of are Excel and Word and, I don't know, Notepad++, whatever we want to have in here.
Yeah.
And this would be a very simple way that you have a set list of options that you can choose from. Maybe you want to add some other tool and you have a nice, quick way to add that. But this is somewhat limited, right? We only can keep track of a certain number of things. We don't have any data associated with them. I don't even know what category of tool it is. It's not really good for summarizing. So this is, something you would do in Excel or some other kind of text-based spreadsheet. But the beauty with an all-in-one doc like CODA is you can build rich connections between databases. And so often when I'm building out, my schema, building out a doc like this, I'll start with a select list if I am not sure whether I need the, full rich connections yet. And if I decide I do want that kind of deep, rich connection, I can just come into the options for the select list, and we have this handy little button that says convert to table. And what this will do is it will convert that list into a table. And now instead of being a select list, this column has become a lookup, and a lookup to the tools table. And what that means is instead of choosing from a list of text options, you're actually choosing from the rows in that table. And so the beauty of that
is maybe I'll interrupt you quickly there. 2 things. Yes, you can do this in Excel, but it's a lot more complicated. And if you watch the just released online course that I made about Notion, where I explain exactly this, how you can connect different databases and make lookup fields and so on. This is another thing that makes it so much easier inside CODA. Press a button and make the select list to an actual table. This is just a game changer because this way we can just create the first table easy, with just some select options because we don't know what it will be later on. And then we have hundreds of options in there and we think, okay, maybe we make a table out of this one button and we'll convert it. Try to do this in Notion.
Yeah, it's a really simple thing, but it is quite powerful. It's one of those little nice features of CODA that someone came up with a long time ago and is just tremendously useful, because it's very, very common that you want to start with a simple list and then you decide later that you want more information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so then just to kind of drive home this message of it being a rich connection, if for example we had some other attributes here, I think eventually we'll build them out for the tools. Maybe the category, maybe this is, we call it a spreadsheet category. We could come back and revisit that. Maybe that should be its own table. Maybe that should be a select list. But now, because these are rich references, if I, just hover over this lookup to Excel, I have all of the information associated with it. I have all of the properties of that row that we're referencing. And so, later, if we want to pull out that information, we want to summarize it, we have all of the ability, because it's really a deep connection to that row. It's not just the text value.
Yeah, and I like this again, this preview section there. Something that we know from Obsidian, for example, with the preview of the next page, something I'm missing inside Notion. So it's not that I want to bash against Notion, especially not that you saw this course probably. Notion is great for so many things, but when it comes to these details, then other tools are just ahead of the game, and I don't understand why Notion has this. Okay, let's go ahead then.
Yeah. So
this is not a text field, a category.
Right.
Yeah,
so
you could easily switch this now
to
yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
So maybe, maybe a select list is actually what we want to start with. And, similarly to how it's easy to turn a select list into a table, it's also easy to turn text into a select list. So, again, let's just put this back and I'll show you that, CODA is smart enough to catch the duplicate. So, for example, maybe I just started with text. I didn't realize that it was a set list of options. And now I want to turn it into a select list. I just come over to the column type and I say, make a new select list. And you can see it finds all of the unique entries and it turns it now into a select list for me. So it's it's really easy to switch between these different types and figure out what is the schema, what is the format for those columns that works best for your use case. And I think for now this works just fine as a select list. I don't know if there's any other information we need to keep about those categories. But maybe later on we want to have some top level summary. How many people use spreadsheet software? How many people use doc software? How many people use all-in-one? So maybe later we will convert that into a table, but I'm not worried about that because it's really easy to do that later on.
Absolutely.
And so there's no danger that if I don't do it now, it's going to cause problems down the line.
Yeah. Nice.
Great. So I think we could do probably something similar here for the person column. Maybe I submitted this review and you submitted that review. But I think really what we would want here, again, maybe we start with select list, but I think we're probably going to want some kind of CRM, some kind of separate table that keeps track of all of the contacts. And so maybe this is, the people table. And similarly, we might want to have all sorts of information about them. Maybe this is their first name, and we also want to keep track of their last name and maybe their email as a start. We could do all sorts of information with that. But again, now we have these rich references. I could pull out, I'm Noah Silverstein, you're Tom Solid, so we can have all of that information linked in here. And now again, when I hover over it, I have all of that nice rich information. Great. Okay, so this looks like a pretty good start. Is there anything you think that is missing from these kind of base tables that we're working from?
No, nothing is missing. Just with the people database that you just created there, this is then the final idea, because I saw this in another community where people were able to create their business projects actually, and they used Airtable for this. And people inside the community were able to pick themselves from the community to link it together with their account. And this is the ultimate idea, that we actually can link their different productivity systems. So people can find themselves to pick from the list to create a productivity system. And this is what we will have in future sessions, Noah, where we will then start linking the community up, adding Typeform to this, and really connect the dots of the different databases and build one single source of truth. Guys, this is exactly what I love, and this is what we will do here. Yeah, thanks. We are on the right track here.
Great. So I'm just adding in some dummy data here. I think, so what you're getting at is that we're going to want some kind of summary of all of the reviews for each person. You want to be able to look at their full productivity system. And so I think this is a great chance to look at, we call them reverse lookups, basically summarizing connections between tables. And what I mean by that is for each person, I probably want to be able to look at all of the reviews for tools that person has submitted. Maybe I've submitted for Excel and you've submitted for Notepad and for Word. So I'll just add in some fake data here. And that's not the cleanest way to look at things. And so maybe we want to be able to summarize all of your tool ratings. And so the way that we would do that in CODA is using our formula language. But I want to also point out that you don't have to be an expert to be able to use the powerful tools of CODA. We try and make it accessible. A lot of it you can do without having to write any formulas at all. And so if I come into this column type here and I'm going to change it, you can see under lookup we have this magical little blue dot. And you can see up at the top, it has this nice little referenced by section. And what this is saying is that another table is looking up this table. It's specifically the ratings table has a lookup to the people table. It basically sees the back reference. And it says, do you want to add that in? Do you want to have a summary of it? And without writing any formulas, I just click this and it will pull in all of the backwards references. It finds all of the ratings that are associated with that person. And I didn't have to write any formulas to do this. Of course, if I want to look at how that was done, I can do that. So if I just come into this this column and I look at the formula, it's actually quite simple what it's written. This is a very common CODA formula that you'd write, one that when you get familiar with CODA, it's kind of second nature. But basically what it's doing is it's looking at that tool ratings table. And so it's looking at each of the rows in that table, and then it's filtering it down to find the ones where the person matches the current row where that formula is being executed. So this is a column formula. It gets run for Noah, it gets run for Tom, it gets run for each of the rows in this people table. And for each of them, it knows that current row. It knows what this row is. This row is either Noah or it's Tom in this case. And so it says which of those ratings matches the person. And then nicely it spits out this kind of reverse lookup and it tells us, I've submitted a review for Excel and you've done it for Notepad++ and for Word.
Yeah, and the logic next thing to do would be to have such field in the tools database and get an average of the ratings for each tool.
Exactly. So, again, very similarly here, I have that nice little blue dot and it says again, hey, I see that I'm referenced by the tool ratings table. And just like that, I can pull in all of the tool ratings. In this case, we don't have any duplicates. So why don't, I'll submit a review for Word as well. And, make sure it's different than yours so that we have different opinions. And then we could pull out the averages. So, maybe we want to start with something very simple. Maybe just how many reviews have been submitted. Maybe we want to know how sparse the data is. And so, again, I'll just use some formula magic here. I can just come in and click add formula. I'll make sure that this is a number column because I want to spit out a number here. I like to use, there's a little shortcut. If you're in a cell and you just hit equals, it'll bring up the formula builder. I've been using CODA for a long time, so I'm very comfortable with the CODA formula language. So I like to use little shortcuts like that. But in this case, the formula
I just want to point out, I'm not a coder or I'm not a developer. So, but still, the way the CODA formulas work is really great. And there's something satisfying to this once the things work. But you really guided so well. So you will explain this in detail now when you're showing this. But it's really explained so well, what is wrong and where do you find the information and so on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I love writing in the CODA formula language. It really feels much more modern and easy to work with, similar to kind of modern programming language. It's really a world of difference from people who are used to VLOOKUPs in Excel and all of that madness. And so there's a couple things that make it, pretty easy to work with. The first thing I'll note here is it actually has some really good suggestions for me that I can, just kind of accept. And so first it's saying, pull out these different columns if I want to refer to the other columns in the row. So for example, in this case, I want to look at all of the tool ratings for each of the tools. And you can see that it's giving me the suggestion. I can just click tab to complete it. And I can click on it to get all sorts of information about what that actually is. And you can see that what this is this row. Again, that refers to the row where the formula is being run. So is it for Excel? Is it for Word? Is it for Notepad? And then it's pulling out the column. And it's even doing this really nice thing where it actually highlights the data that we're referencing. When I click on that chip, it actually tells me what data am I looking at. Well, in this case, I'm looking at the tool ratings column. And we try and make this, as explained as possible. It says, so it, gives you this whole just very descriptive explanation. It says, this is a value from the column tool ratings for each row in the table tools. It lives on the data page, and it outputs a list of rows from the tool ratings table. And then it even gives me an example here. So really all of the information about what is this data that I'm looking at. One tip I like to use, we give this nice little icon here that's right at the edge of where your output is. And if you click and hover over it, it tells you what the return type is. What is the data that's being spit out of your formula? This is really helpful for kind of gut checking that you're doing the right thing and making sure you know what you're working with. So in this case, it's this little row icon, and there's two of them stacked on top of each other. And so it says we're outputting a list of rows. And so basically we've referenced this row tool ratings, and that's basically all of the ratings which are for that tool. So it's a list of rows. So that makes sense. And now I want to figure out how many there are. And one of the other really nice things about the CODA formula language is we have dot notation. And what I mean by that is, if you're coming from Excel or another spreadsheet formula language, probably the way that you would be familiar doing this is you would put count and you'd kind of wrap it up, and it would tell you how many there are. And that works just fine. It says, that one has 1, this one has 2, and so on and so forth. But of course, this was a very simple formula. And you can imagine if we're writing a much more complex formula where we're maybe doing some multiplication and there's an if statement and we're referencing multiple options, it often is really difficult to understand the thing that you've just written. And often that's because you're wrapping and wrapping and wrapping and wrapping each of these functions. And so you can't really understand what's happening. You have to figure out, do the parentheses match? Is this within that function or is it within this function? Trying to match up where your parentheses and your commas are. And so what we have in CODA, in the CODA formula language, instead of wrapping around that tool ratings, I can just hit dot, and then I can put the function after. So in this case, I can just do dot count, and it does exactly the same thing. But now I've done it in kind of this sequential fashion where I say, take some data and then do some operation to it. And so the formula actually kind of ends up reading like a sentence. It says, start with this, then do this to it, then do this to it, then do this to it, and you see what you end up with. And so you can kind of build your way up to the formula doing one thing at a time instead of having to have it all in your brain and understand what's happening. And of course, we have lots of documentation, what is count, what does it do, examples, the inputs and the outputs. Again, I can look that it's outputting a number. We have, all of these little things to help you. And in in the case like this, it's pretty simple. But when you get into more complex formulas, this stuff becomes very, very useful.
Yeah, because I can just add in the brackets right there where it's blinking the next thing. So I could, So we come to this when we come to the if statements, if this, then that. This becomes really handy then. I realized this today when I tried to build something my own as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, maybe let's just go, one step more complex. So I'll just duplicate this column. And now let's get to what you're saying, where we probably want to look at the averages of the reviews. So, we want to know, what is the average input rating? Again, we're going to spit out some kind of number. Maybe we want to format it differently. And this, this formula is going to start out pretty similar. We want to look at the tool ratings, but instead of those row references, we actually want to project out. We call it projecting when you pull out a property for each of those rows, for each of those ratings. And again, you can see it has them all recommended to me here without having to do anything. So it says, do you want to pull out the tool? Do you want to pull out the person? Do you want to pull out the scores? All of these things. In this case, I want to pull out the input. And so again, I don't have to write anything. I just select the one I want and I click tab. And now you can see the icon has changed. Now we're outputting a list of numbers. We're outputting each of the input scores for each of those ratings. And again, you can see we have this nice, color-coded little highlighting that says tool ratings is coming from here. Then we've pulled out input, and you can see it's actually pulling from this column up here. So I have a very easy visual understanding of where these things are coming from. And so now I have this list of numbers, and now I want to do the average. And so again, instead of wrapping it, I can just add at the end dot average. And so again, this whole thing reads like a sentence. It says, hey, for each of these rows, pull out the ratings that are associated with the tool, then pull out the input score for each of them, then take the average of all of those numbers. And we can gut check that this is doing the right thing. So this is for Excel, there's only one, so the input should be 4. That sounds right. For Word, we have 2 scores. We have a 4 and a 2, and the average is showing as a 3. So I think that's doing the right thing. Does that process and that formula make sense?
Awesome.
So I'll go ahead and duplicate this another 3 times, actually 4 times. In this case, we want to maybe pull this out for each of those so we could have some understanding, what is the average control, what is the average output, what is the average fine, and we can visualize that later down the line if we want. But I think this probably gives you a good sense of what the powers you get when you link together multiple databases. This is really kind of the most simple example. It's kind of the core power of having linked databases or linked tables.
That's still the most underrated thing in the digital world that we can do over being on a paper notebook. Even when you're taking notes, as soon you're connecting the dots and information, it's just next level. And this is what we are here for, the paperless movement, to make people clear the advantages of that we have in a digital world.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So this is very advanced, and we are building a tool database, but this applies, again, the Notion course that I have there I talk about this as well, different ways how you can connect data, but it enriches your overall outcome and your overall knowledge base that you have there as soon as you start connecting information. Yeah, I love that.
Right. Great. So I think this is probably a kind of a good base for our core tables. Maybe just as like a preview of probably what we would get into next, we could start looking at how we'll have the end users, the people in your community, actually interact with this. So maybe we should build up a very simple form which allows you to submit tool ratings. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do the form.
Perfect. So maybe okay. So there's a couple ways we could go about this, but I'll go ahead and add a sub page here. And this will be all of our forms. Maybe we want to keep track of this in one place, the way that people add information. We've kind of been working on one page, but of course you can use pages and sub pages and organize all your information however works best for you. I think eventually we'll probably end up with some nice front cover pages that have information about the framework and show the most rated tools, and some nice comparison views that shows you how you can look at these different tools and their different strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you look at each person's productivity system, all of that kind of stuff. But in this case, again, I can just do the / to open that / command menu, and I could type in form. I'll also just point out, if you're not familiar with all of the features yet, you can always come to this Explore panel, just in the top right, and we basically have all of the building blocks that you can use in CODA nicely laid out for you. So in this case, I could come into tables, and we have all sorts of different views for the same data you can have, and one of them is a form. So I could just drag this in here. I didn't have to know that it existed in the first place. So that Explorer panel is a great place to start. And then in this case, we're going to want a view of the people table. We already kind of have this base table where the data is going to live, and we just want a way for people to be able to add information. And so you can see, it adds in a new form for me, and this is going to be our tool rating form. This allows people to add in their information and choose which tool they want and add in the information. Oh, actually, I think I did this wrong. I think we're going to want
I just wanted to mention, because I think it's the tool rating table that you have to refer here.
Right.
Otherwise, you have a hard time rating it.
So we'll probably, maybe want a form for that later on as well. When you first join, maybe you want to add it, but maybe we'll pull that from Typeform. Maybe we'll, pull that from your existing
that would be
CRM.
an interesting question, information that lives on different tables. Is it possible to use one form to collect the information across tables?
Right. So there's certainly a number of ways we could build it up, right? Maybe you select yourself from an existing list of people. Maybe you have to submit a separate form to add your information in the first place. Maybe you just have to put in your first and last name, and then we match it up if it exists, or we automatically create a new entry if it doesn't exist. That might be a good flow. So I can imagine building that in a number of different ways. But let's start with just kind of the most simple here, which is this view of tool ratings. Like I said, this is a beta, so it looks like that Canvas column isn't playing super nicely. So I'll just put this back to text for now, and we can come back to those fancy Canvas columns later. But in this case, so again, this is going to be the form, this is going to be the tool ratings form. And then we can come in and we can customize this. So if I just click edit layout, this builds, brings me into this nice visual editor where I can, configure all this information about submitting a tool review. So, first up, you want to choose your tool, or, actually, you probably want to say, who are you first? So, right now, this is basically selecting from that existing list of people. We could do it that way. We also could have it where you just submit your name and then we match it. For now, maybe let's just, we can have this be a select list from the existing one. So I'll just make this a drop down, and that means, you come in and you select your name from the list. We could change that later on. I think similarly for tools, we probably want this to be a drop down because otherwise it might end up being a very, very long list. And then, you'll want to add in all of your scores. What is your review for input, for output, for control, for refine? So, we could lay that out however we want, and then just kind of some open space for pros and cons. And, just like any other form builder, maybe I want to require certain properties. Maybe I want to force people to sign in or not have to sign in, depending on how we want to collect their information. Of course, that's another option here. Instead of them having to tell us who they are, we can just have them, sign in to submit the form. They can just sign in with their Google account. That's a pretty low friction way. And then we guarantee that we'll get a good email for them. So, you have lots of options how you want to do this.
Yeah, but quick question there. This is a good thing when we want to connect databases, especially external databases. Is there a way to have a single sign-on that people actually can sign, just being signed in my membership and they are logged into CODA the same time?
Sure. So, we have a number of ways that you can sign into CODA. You can use, email and password. You can use Google. You can use Apple sign in. And you also can use SSO. So if you do have, an identity provider like Okta, or, there are many others that your company uses or something like that, you can actually set up your account. We see a lot of people just use Gmail. We had such a broad group of people already have a Gmail, and you just click the one button and it adds your account.
Yeah, of course. But then it doesn't mean that people are signed up with the same email in the membership. So it is always confusing, forcing members to use a different platform with the same email. This is a lot of support going on then.
Right. Maybe we just want them to have to put in the email manually. So, we know it's the right one, or maybe we just have them put in their first and last name and we match based on
that. This is the solution that we discussed in the beginning, when we pull in the data automatically, and then there's a list of the actual members available and people can pick themselves from the list. And this is the easiest way, and then they don't need to log in at all.
Right. And so, I can show you what we've done here is actually very similar to that. So if I go ahead and preview what this form is going to look like, we'll see, can you still see this tab? No, I think you're only seeing one of my tabs. I can just go ahead and come here. Yeah. So this is now the form that we just published. Oh, it hasn't been created yet. We have to give it a second. So let me just look at the preview instead. So if I just come into preview the form, let's see, can you see that? Yes, looks good.
Yeah.
Great. So now, this is a very simple form we've created. We could customize this in lots of fancy ways. But I think very similar to what you're describing, because that person is a lookup, it's pulling from the person table, I actually have a list of people who are already in the CRM. And so, for example, if we were pulling in that list from, a pack, pulling it in from your community, then everyone in the community would already have an entry. And so they could just, type in their name and find themselves from that list. Yeah. And if we've built this in a way that's relatively secure, so I can see my information, but I can't see any of the data associated with it. I just see the display column. I just see my name. So maybe want to search by full name, maybe just Noah and my last initial. We could configure how we want that to look. And then again, maybe I want to submit a review for Notepad++, and I have this very easy interaction where I can add all different stuff. Maybe I forgot to submit one of these, and it will, tell me, hey, that's a required field. So, make sure I submit it correctly, and I can go ahead and submit that response, and it'll be sent away. And if we go back and look at the tables, that form entry will now be there in the data table. You can see there's a new entry for Notepad++ under NOAA.
Yeah, and the average is updated as well.
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome. One thing that I'm really excited about will be the word cloud. So whenever we have the pros and cons, we can actually create word clouds out of this. Maybe quickly you show this one.
Yeah. Right. So, there's a couple of ways we could do this, but maybe let's preview one of our cool new features. We could look at the canvas column. So maybe for each of these tools, I could just add in a canvas, and this is going to be kind of our summary canvas. And on here, for Excel, we have all this information. I probably would, clean this up and make it look a little bit nicer. But maybe we want to add in a word cloud here. And this word cloud is going to be a word cloud pulling from those tool ratings. And we can actually look at all of the pros and cons that have been selected. And looks like, again, we maybe are having some bugs here with this new feature. So I'll go ahead and do it the old-fashioned way.
On a beta here. So this is still in beta, this function that you just wanted to show. Not a word cloud, but this canvas. So
yeah, but you get the idea, right? This would allow you to add rich information like that word cloud here. But just to give you a little
this
preview
is awesome.
of what that would look like.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So maybe we want to have a nice visualization for all the tools, and maybe I'll just add in a word cloud here as an example. So if I add in a word cloud for the tool ratings, you can see that I can pull which information I want. So maybe I want to pull in the pros. And we even have some smart functionality like pull out really frequently used English words like the or and or kind of
really?
Those words you don't want to include. I could turn that off, and then I get everything included. I can even manually pull things out. If it's a review, then maybe I don't want to include. Maybe we don't want to include input, control, output, refine because everyone's going to use those when they're talking about it. But if I come back and let's pretend there's some other stuff. So we're looking. Let's do Word in this case. It's super easy to write. I hate the formatting, but it's so blazing fast. Everyone can add in the information they want. I'm sure those are your true thoughts. And of course, now it's being filled in. These are all of the pros that have been pulled in here. And there's lots of ways that we could build a nice interface to look at this right now.
So now we could add a filter. Yeah, so now we could add an interactive filter where you can filter by tool, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to do.
So that's a great way. Yeah, that's a great way to show the filter off.
Yeah, so if I just come in, this is a view like any other view in CODA, which means you're looking at the same data, you're just looking at it in a different way. So of course I could just put this back to a table. A word cloud is just one of the many ways that we have to look at your data. And just like any other view, you can filter it. So that means, right now we're showing all of the entries from that tool ratings table, but we probably only want to look at one tool at a time. It doesn't really make much sense at all to look at all of the tools at once. And so what I could do is I can come in here and click add filter. And I can filter by tool. And I could choose this manually. I only want to look at Excel. I only want to look at Word. But what you mentioned is actually might want to have this be interactive. I want to be able to choose what tool I'm looking at. And so what I can do is I can come into this little option here, and instead of choosing it's any of a certain number of tools, I can click Use Interactive Filter. And what this allows us to do is use controls. And controls are basically little interactive elements that let you choose items or a checkbox or a slider. It's basically an interactive element that you can reference in the formula language. And so what I can do is I can click that little create control. And what it does for me is it creates this interactive control for tools right above the table. And now this is basically just like a lookup. And what this is doing is, right now it's selecting all of them, but maybe I only want to do for Word. And as soon as I change that value, you can see that it actually changes the items that are being filtered here. So right now it's only showing 3 rows out of the total 5. And so, anyone could come in and change what they're looking at. Right now, there's no reviews for Notepad++. I could modify the settings here. We probably only want to be able to look at one at a time, et cetera, et cetera. So we really can customize this to our heart's content. Eventually we'll build out visualizations for the scores. But I think in terms of looking at reviews and what people are doing, I think a word cloud like this will actually be quite powerful.
Yeah, and to close the loop for today, actually, this could all go onto the single page per tool. So we would open up one page for a tool, and then this would be the card view maybe of the of the table that we have there, and then we can lay out a table, especially with the, is it only 2 columns or even more that we can do then in a new version of CODA?
You can do up
So
to
we
4.
could really, awesome. So we can really lay this out in a nice visual way, but also pulling the individual pros and cons from the different users down there. So you have something like GetApp, and of course we have so many tool comparison tools or platforms out there that you can go to. But the idea here is that this is really a community exclusive platform that focuses on this ICOR and your personal, how to explain it. It's very niched down, the tools that we use and that we talk about in the community all the time, and other platforms it's very broad. So this will be really helpful, give a lot of insights into that, why different people using several tools or different tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
that explained. It's always good to show it when it's ready. But I think with the word cloud and what you're just showing here right now, people really get an idea now what is possible that we will deliver.
Sure. And so, as a very, very simple example, you can imagine here, I'm looking at some, all of the tools in a nice card view. We can customize what these look like. And of course, this is all nice and interactive, so I can drag and change. I have it grouped by categories, so I could look at, all of the spreadsheet tools. Of course, Word is not a tool, but maybe we call it a text tool. And, I want to compare between, all of the text tools. Do I want to use Notepad++? Do I want to use Word? And then maybe for each of these, we open it up, and you can imagine
this would be the individual side, yeah.
And we can do all sorts of really powerful customizations here about how this looks, right? So maybe we want to, pull in all of these scores. We want to have all of the averages here. And, we want to actually be able to look at the individual ratings, right? So if I add in this ratings, back, I can actually have a full inline table here. It's kind of sub table, we call it, where you can look at everyone's individual rating for that specific tool, and you could dig into them, and then maybe go into this person's control ratings, or their total summary for all of the tools they use. So we really could customize and build this out exactly as we want it to look.
Yeah, I love that.
Great.
I think this is a good moment where we will just stop this session. This is really the bare bones that we have here, and we could already use it this way. So I could now go in and fill up the databases with information that I collected over the tools over time and go from there. But we have a bigger vision there. So there will be another session. Make sure that you join next time. I'll let you know. So this stream, the recording will stay on YouTube for 3 days. And then it will go away like the other streams. It will become available inside the Paperless Movement membership. There you will have everything, the chapters and all this. You can comment in there. Cannot wait to dig deeper into all this. And let us know what you think about this idea. And Noah, thank you very much for being with me.
It's been my pleasure to be here. Excited to build some CODA docs. And of course, if people have questions or things they're interested in seeing done in CODA, or something they've always wondered if it's possible, happy to indulge that and try building things. I'm a lover of building good systems, so I'm always happy to play and to think through what we can build.
Yeah, that's awesome. And especially with all the new features that CODA is coming up in the near future, this gonna be fun. All right, Noah, thank you very much. So there are no questions as far I can see. So then we will end the stream for today. And Noah, we will meet up next time. I'm not sure if it will be next Monday. We will figure something out and we will let you guys know.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to the next session.
No, me too. Believe me that. Bye-bye.